Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm super excited to shed some light on using WorkView to divine your user base. In this webinar, we're going to discuss why creating a WorkView solution for your user base can be beneficial to an entire organization, as well as make day-to-day business processes more efficient. My name is Nella, and I'm a customer success specialist here at Naviant. Today, we'll be covering these topics. We'll start by talking about WorkView, what it is, what it takes to create it, and how it can benefit your user base. I'll then review some key best practices to remember upon creating a WorkView application. During the demo, I'll show you how WorkView can make completing business processes easier. And finally, to see it all come together, we'll explore how WorkView is configured in Studio. So now I want you to ask yourself a couple questions to think about during this presentation. Where does your business data currently live? Does everyone have the knowledge to update or view that data if needed? Every business has some way of tracking, reporting, and controlling data. WorkView is a powerful tool that can help you bridge knowledge gaps within your organization. So now we know that WorkView is totally awesome, but what is it? WorkView is a configurable application creation tool that allows you to create customized solutions for tracking all types of business interactions. WorkView keeps data in a centralized location to keep it up to date and accurate, and information within WorkView solutions can be easily retrieved with a number of OnBase clients. So how can WorkView help define your user base? We all know that change is scary, and it forces you to adapt to new ways of doing things. A common and quite large change that most of us faced in the last year is COVID. But that's why we need to remember, it's not if change happens, it's when change happens. WorkView can be an excellent resource for maintaining updates within your user base, such as a new hire, a promotion, and transitions within teams. WorkView can be viewed as an internal rules engine that allows users to easily control changes without waiting for an overnight IIS reset. Therefore, users get up-to-date information that they can trust is accurate. Let's take this HR legal name change request form, for example. Notice the 12 orange text boxes that make up just under half of the form? That is WorkView's magic shining through. WorkView is referenced to automatically fill out the rest of the user's information once the employee ID is set. By utilizing WorkView for our user base, completing forms like this one is quick and easy. Another example is when filling out a form where a resource such as a salesperson is needed. Instead of asking around or wasting time trying to track down the names of everyone on the sales team, WorkView can be used to filter out only the users that are a salesperson to be displayed in the dropdown. Just with these two basic examples, you can already start to see why WorkView defining your user base can be beneficial to an organization. When using a WorkView solution, there are some key terms that you should be aware of. At the highest level, a WorkView solution is called an application. The screenshot here shows navigating to the applications from the File tab in the Unity client, and you can see the 3 applications I have access to. Applications represent the business process that you're tracking and reporting data on. Inside an application, a number of tables are built called classes. Classes represent a person, place, or thing, basically a noun, that you're trying to track data on. For example, in this screenshot for the Information Technologies application, there are filters for employees and their departments, hardware, software, and job postings. Classes display relative information needed via filters. And filters do exactly what it sounds like. It filters out information and allows you to search within your WorkView solution. Filter bars such as this Information Technologies filter bar in the screenshot, for example, you can see the filters contained within it. You must configure at least one filter bar to give users the ability to view filters. Filters and filter bars can both be configured to give users permission to access certain filters. If the table itself is a class, then the columns are attributes. Attributes are the adjectives that describe the noun. For example, take this all software filter for our software class in the screenshot. The adjectives or attributes that are being used to describe the software is the manufacturer name, the product version, and the license key associated with it. This is the data we want to track. A single row in the class table is known as an object. Using the same example in our all software filter, Microsoft Office 2003 Basic is the information of the attributes we want to know. Essentially, an object is the information of the data we're tracking. You can create new objects directly from the application ribbon by clicking on that plus software button. When creating an object or opening an already existing one, the information shows in this window called a view. Views are created within WorkView solutions and configurable to add all attributes necessary for the class. If you're familiar with creating Unity forms, the creation of views are similar to those. It uses easy drag and drop functionality, which we'll see during the demo. So now we know what WorkView is, how it can help define your user base, and what is needed to be configured for a WorkView application. Before you get too excited and build out your WorkView solution, it's best practice to design what it is you want to accomplish. Questions you can ask yourself during this designing process is, who will be using this and in which clients are they going to access it from? What kind of relationships exist between this data? And how will users retrieve and report on this data? A best practice when creating your views also involves designing and sketching out how you want this to look for users. Once you've built these designs, get feedback from users by giving them access to test it out. Additionally, be sure to use good naming conventions so that once this solution is created, it can be easily managed by others. By using good naming conventions, you provide structure when adding to your solution in the future. For example, when creating a process for HR, I would maybe want to label anything I create for that process with a prefix of HR. Also, don't forget to test your solution with multiple user groups and save often. All right, so let's see this in action. So I've configured an application that showcases how you can utilize WorkView to centralize all of your users' information. So I'm going to hop into my Unity client, and we're going to check out the functionality behind using the WorkView application within my Unity forms. So I'm going to navigate to my ribbon up at the top, select Forms, and go down and find my resource request form. So you can see here the same orange text boxes that I pointed out in the example earlier. That's using WorkView to pull those values onto the form once the user ID is specified. So I'm going to go ahead and type in M. Scott and click Enter. And once I hit Enter, you see the rest of that information gets filled out. I want to point out the manager here, D. Wallace. That is going to be later, important later on in the demo. We're going to come back to that. So in the second half of this form, we have resource drop-down boxes that are using WorkView to filter the users who are resources. So if I wanted to request for a consultant resource, I could use the drop-down, and it shows me the 2 users that are consultant resources. I'm going to just select J Helper, and I'm going to fill out the rest of the information at the bottom. Please send help. And then I'm going to submit my form. So now I want to show you what users see when using the WorkView application. Some scenarios where your information could change in your organization, we'll view that later. And to navigate there, we're going to select the application up at the top. I named mine Webinar. So I'm going to select Webinar, and in the ribbon, I'm going to select my filters. So since I'm logged in as manager, I do have access to all three of the filters. However, you can give permission to for users to access certain filters and deny them access for others. So for example, this all employees class, when I open that up, you can see here that there's a couple departed employees, and most people don't really care about those. They most likely want to know who is an active employee and who's a resource that could be available for them. So let's start out by just creating an employee object to be saved within WorkView. I can do that in my filter tab here. I can click this create button, or I can navigate back to my webinar tab and select this plus employees button here. Once I select that, my view appears. And now we just type in the user's information. So A Martin is the user ID, Angela, last name Martin. And then for the title, I can use this drop-down box and select her title. And same thing here with the drop-down, select the manager. This user is also going to be a project manager resource. So I'm going to select this checkbox here. Then I'm going to go up to the top and click Save and Close. So we can see that the object shows up here in our All Employees tab. We can check our resources to make sure she showed up there since she is a project manager resource. And then just for fun, let's look at the active employees filter also. And we can find her right there. So now let's say that we want to hire somebody back. So I'm gonna go find my Ryan Howard object, and it looks like they're not here. So I'm gonna go back to my all employees filter, look for Ryan Howard, and yeah, there he is. So we could see here that he was an intern that reported to Jay Halpert, and this checkbox selected here indicates that he is in fact departed. So I can just simply double click on this object. My view opens up, and I can edit it by just unselecting that departed checkbox and hitting save and close. You can see here in the all employees filter that departed checkbox has been unchecked. And if I go back to my active employees, Ryan now shows up here. So this now he probably isn't an intern anymore, so this needs to be updated again. Let's double click here and use our title drop-down box to switch it from intern to sales. Then we'll hit save and close. So that could have been done in one step. I just wanted to show how this is reflected immediately onto the rest of the solution. And finally, let's say that Michael Scott's manager, has changed. I can just, again, double click on the object itself, go to my manager drop-down box and select the correct one. I can then hit save and close at the top, and the new manager is now reflected there. So now let's see the changes that take immediate effect on the rest of OnBase. So let's go back to our resource request form. So I'm going to go to my home tab, click forms, and find my resource request form again. I'm going to type in M. Scott again for the user ID, and notice that that manager has changed to the updated one that I just changed it to. So, pretty cool, right? Hopefully seeing these autofill keywords in action and changes being reflected immediately will motivate you to create a solution for your user base. So I'm curious, are you using OnBase to manage your business's user base? Pick the one that best describes yourself, your business. All right, I'll give you another 10 seconds to get your answers in. All right. All right, thank you for that feedback. So now let's jump into Studio and take a look at the components behind the scenes that make up the WorkView solution that you just witnessed. All right, so I'm going to just open up my application in Unity and we're gonna close that. We're gonna open up Studio. All right, so first I wanna start off by going over the layout of Studio. Starting at the right side, we have our properties pane. And right now it's showing the properties for the webinar application that I have selected over to the right in the repositories pane here. And the repositories pane is where you do most of the creation within the application. And then finally, this large section in the middle that takes up most of your window is now showing the start page. But once I start opening my views and filters, they're going to start opening up in here. And since we're going to start off by viewing properties for this application, instead of making your eyes jump back and forth like you're at a tennis match, I'm going to move the properties pane by dragging on the top of it. And there's a dial that appears. And when I hover over the arrows in the dial, it highlights where it's going to drop this pane once I let go of the button. So I'm going to put it right next to our repositories pane here, just to keep everything kind of on this side of the screen starting out. So now switching gears into the actual creation of the WorkView application. So over in the repositories pane, I started out by right-clicking, selecting New, and selecting this application button here. Once my application was created, it created these 3 folders down below. When I open up my classes folder, you can see my employees class I have here. When I select it, in the properties pane, you can see all of the attributes that I have listed for this class. So I have my user ID, the first name, last name, email, title, manager. And then when I start getting down to these bottom ones, the departed attribute and my resource attributes, those are all a Boolean data type. So these Boolean attributes are represented as a checkbox, and it returns a value of 1 or true when the checkbox is checked, and it returns a value of 0 or false when the checkbox is unchecked. So when my departed attribute is selected, like before we hired Ryan back, it's returning the value of true or 1. So let's say that I wanted to add an attribute to this list. Say I wanted to know my employee's phone number. I can click Add at the bottom of our properties pane here, and I can type in phone for the display name and also the name, and click OK. Notice it gets added to the bottom of the list, but that ID is 0, so we're going to want to save. Once I save, you can see that ID number appears. So back in the repositories pane, I'm going to expand my employees class and click on the filters folder underneath. When I double click on my all employees filter, you can see it pops up where that start page was. Right now it is showing the display columns, and I just want to switch back over to Unity real quick. And I'm going to click between the active employees and all employees filter in Unity Client. Can you see a difference between the 2 filters? It's pretty clear. Yeah, it's that attribute, those extra attributes at the end. So in Studio, that is where this is being created. You can see the 11 attributes that I have on display for the all employees class. And when I open my active employees class, you can see that the list is much shorter here. Down below, you can also see a preview of what your users are going to see when they open up the filter. So that's pretty handy. And if I wanted to add something, an attribute to this list, I could go over into my list. I can take my new attribute I just created, phone, and just double click. And then it just pops up right there in the display column. I can hit save. And then I'm going to go over 2 tabs to this fixed constraints tab. So remember that a 0 is a false value. So what this fixed constraint is saying is that the departed attribute must equal the value of 0 or false to show an object in this filter. Now I'm going to open up my resources filter and navigate over to the fixed constraint tab on this one. So you can see here there's a couple extra lines of constraints here. And we want to pay attention to this connector being used. So we have that same departed equals 0, and our consultant or our resource attributes are equal to the value of 1, and they're using this OR connector. So basically what this entire constraint is saying for this filter is the departed attribute must be true, and at least one of these resources must also be true. So now let's go back to our repositories pane and expand the views folder and open up our employees view. So now we see our view here, and all the way to the left we have our toolbox that pops in and out when you hover over the little box here. I'm gonna click it and select that little pin icon. When I select that, it sticks and it doesn't go away, so it won't be disappearing on us. And like I mentioned before, you want to take the time to sketch out how you want this to look for users. Even after I sketched out how I wanted it to look, I still needed to move some things around once I tested out the solution. So here I used a table that you can find in your layout elements to have all of the attributes stay where they are. And underneath, you can see the list of attributes that we have here. And we can see our new attribute we created, phone. Like I said before, this is just like a Unity form. I can click on my phone attribute and drag it to the empty space there, and it appears. I don't want to forget to save. All right, and last but not least, we want to look at our filter bars at the bottom of this webinar class we have here. So when I click on my employees filter bar, you can see the 3 filters that I have included under this filter bar. And filter bars are created to group filters for certain user groups or use cases. So let's say that I wanted a filter bar for admin users only, and I want the all employees filter to be in there. I can start off by removing this all employees filter from my employees filter bar, and then go back over to my repositories pane. I can right click, select new, and go down to filter bar. I'm gonna wanna name my filter bar something along the lines of admin, so that we know that this is for admin users. I'm gonna click next, and I'm gonna add my all employees class, or all employees filter, excuse me. We're gonna click next. And for now, I'm just gonna give it manager permissions. All right, so now we can see our employees filter bar with our resources and active employees filters in there. And then we can see our admin filter bar with our all employees filter in there. And you see these little asterisks, that means that I forgot to save. So I'm gonna save. All right, so now after I saved, I'm going to also reset the cache server. Yes, please. So I want to see the changes that we made to our view with our new attribute that we added. So I'm going to exit my Unity client from the system tray down here. Exit OnBase. All right, and then I'm going to relaunch my Unity client. Log in. And I'm going to navigate back to my webinar application, select my filters, and I'm going to open up an already created object and see if this view has been updated. And it has. We have the phone attribute right here, ready to go. So I got so excited that I forgot one extra component about our filter bars here. When I created this new filter bar, I did give manager permissions for it, but when I am ready to go and add the correct user groups, I can use this tab in the properties panel here, and I can add or remove the necessary user groups here. Got too excited, I passed right over it. All right, so that is it for our demo. And you can see that WorkView is an extremely useful tool that you can use to assist with various types of business processes. And in this webinar, we focused mainly on how creating a WorkView solution to define your user base can bridge knowledge gaps as well as save time while completing business processes. Before creating your own solution for your user base, remember to sketch out the necessary information and components needed for your solution to be used successfully within your organization. And that's all, folks. I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us for this webinar. Again, if you have any questions or would like to suggest a topic for a future webinar, please reach out to support@naviant.com.